Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, June 5th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Trevor May here with you on this episode. We are going to look at some pitching candidates ripe for a fade as the season continues. We're going to try and figure it out, try to predict the future, find the guys who are going to come crashing back to earth, maybe to their projections or to something even worse. Challenging exercise, but we're here to try it nonetheless. Lots of ground to cover today, though, guys. Got a couple of baseball news items everyone should know about. We learned yesterday Pablo López is going to miss 8 to 12 weeks with a grade 2 shoulder strain, the teres major to be specific. I believe it's the exact same injury that Joe Ryan had late in the year last year. Ended Ryan's season. The Twins are optimistic, of course, with that timetable that they'll get him back sometime after the trade deadline, early August, kind of in the best case scenario, maybe early September if he takes the longer end of that window. It does open up an opportunity for David Festa, just not really the way we hoped Festa was going to get that chance in the rotation. Real quick, though, Pablo López posting career best ratios so far. 2.82 ERA, 107 WHIP through 11 starts. So obviously a big loss, regardless of form. But just, is there anything different about Pablo López so far this year that was pushing him to that next level?
I didn't really notice much. I think that the changeup was a slightly different. What was it that was so different about it? But I like rage dropped him today. Not rage at him. Like, I want to be clear. It's nothing about him. It's just the injury situation, and it was an Ottoneu where, like, if somebody picks him up, I get all that money, and I needed the money. I needed the flexibility. But in terms of movement profiles or anything, like, you can't point to velo being up or down, like it's down half a tick. That's nothing. You can't really point to much in the sweeper category. I mean, he does throw it. So if you're Dr. Keith Meister, I guess you're blaming the sweeper. But in terms
Shade. Hear that, Meister? He's calling you out, dude.
Well, he's probably feeling like he's right today. The changeup did have 4 inches more drop, but I just don't like. I think it's just this just happens. Like, I don't know.
It also has 2 inches less of fade, so he definitely is very consciously trying to make it go down as opposed to right. I mean, it's still good. It's 15 inches of arm
what
side,
I see is, like, maybe he just switched to, like, a 4-seam change instead of a 2-seam change. Like,
maybe it's like a little kick situation. Maybe they add a little bit of a
kick. Yeah,
I don't know because that kick change is just different than every other changeup. So, but maybe they found a variation where you could, like, turn it a little bit and get more depth, because I think that's what he was struggling with a little bit last year. It just wasn't. It wasn't.
But also, like,
well.
Even if he's throwing the kick, like. I don't think splitters cause injury, and I've done extensive research on trying to find the link. I couldn't really find one. Did a whole piece on it. Talked to people. Yes, they showed me this, and I know Trevor has had his own sort of issues with it.
Yeah.
So I actually have like an ear open. Like, if you want to tell me that you think that splitters cause injury, then I will say I don't know for sure that they don't. The kick change, though, doesn't have that same, the splitter, you're like, oh, these fingers are wide, and, like, you can feel it down here. The flexor changes changes your mechanics. The kick change is just like you just took one finger and put it up. Like,
it's the same motion generally. Yeah. And the pressures are the same on the fingers too. It's not different. I don't think that would have caused injury. Just real quick on the splitter, though. I don't think the splitter itself, like throwing it a bunch once you've learned it, or if you learned it first, you notice that the guys who've thrown it their whole careers, like all these Japanese guys, they don't get hurt from the splitter. Yeah. So I think it's learning it later. I think it may be more than other pitches because it is a different feel and there's pressure. It's an off-speed pitch where the pressure's on the same fingers as your fastball. Like, you can throw it incorrectly really easily and then throw it really incorrectly as hard as you can, and then that might. But, like, I just think it's not a grip it and rip it. Oh, I learned this pitch yesterday, I'm going to throw it in the game now. It's just maybe one of the only pitches where that's probably not what you should do, because if you do throw it wrong or throw it in a way that isn't sustainable, then when
it has
will
the
get
chance
hurt.
to change your mechanics, like
more so than any other pitch. I think
change
at this
your
moment,
mechanics.
So, and that's what I did. I was stupid. I just thought I was going to be resilient and whatever. And
I'm going to start throwing the splitter now.
And I got. It was really good, and they told me it was good, and that's all I needed. And I made a mistake. Sometimes you screw up.
More of something you would want to add during an off season where you can slowly incorporate it, as opposed to finding that grip, playing catch one day, and a week or two later start throwing it in the game. That would be ramping.
But there are guys who seem to like lose their their sliders when they throw splitters. Like Logan Gilbert has like really leaned into the splitter, and his slider has the worst stuff plus of his career. So there are weird interactions between your pitch types where I say this about Brian Bayo too. It seems like Brian Bayo either has a slider or has a changeup in any given outing, and that's been problematic for him. And it's the rare pitcher that has a really good breaking ball and a really good changeup. I mean, I think of Pedro as like sort of the patron saint of this, and I don't know that there are even that many examples today. I mean, like even Ryan Pepio, I'd take his changeup over his slider, and he's like kind of the example of maybe a guy who can do both.
Yeah.
As far as the Festa outlook goes, long window for him to really establish a spot along with Zebby Matthews. They're both in the rotation together now with the Lopez injury. What's your expectation this time around for David Festa? Can he beat a 4 ERA? Can he be a strikeout per inning guy? Like, what's the appeal from a fantasy perspective now that he has a long window?
I'm worried that it's a small arsenal. And it's a guy that over his career, they've been really hesitant, pitching more longer into outings, probably because it's such a short arsenal. Now, Zebby, they've kind of unleashed him a little bit. He has a 7-inning on his ledger this year. But if you look at batters faced, Festa for his career, he started out with 23 and 24, and since then has never topped 21. So your basically expectation for him is to face 19 or 20 batters. That's really hard to get a win out of that. So I think it's kind of brilliant. It's modern pitching thinking. It's the Brewers right now are doing some version of that, where they just had DL Hall throw 3 innings and then Quinn Priester throw 5 or something after that. For a win. So like it's rethinking pitching roles, and it's something that we've been doing for a while now. But it's hard. I think it'll be harder to own David Festa in fantasy than Zebby, because Zebby has a wider arsenal and they've sort of let him go deeper recently.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Even in some of the good outings we've seen from Festa at AAA, they've been a little bit shorter than you would expect. Hunter Greene is back on the IL. It's a groin strain again. I always feel like when it's an aggravation or the same injury suffered a second time, you can just add a couple of weeks to the timetable. You're not coming back as quickly as you did the first time, which it's a tough blow because this is the second time on the IL, and this is a Cy Young award-winning foundation that Greene was putting together before these injuries popped up. And when you look at the Reds, I know they've got some interesting pitching prospects that are not far away. I think Wade Miley was the corresponding adjustment to the roster, at least to replace Greene, at least temporarily. But I wonder, is there anyone we should be excited about that will get an opportunity later with Greene down, at least for the next couple of weeks, but probably a little bit longer?
I don't know. Who are you?
I have no idea.
Yeah, who are you talking about? You seem to know.
I don't know who's coming up with the Reds, frankly.
Chase Burns?
Yeah, like a Chase Burns sort of decision, right? Like, can they go that quickly with him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Double-A. He's dominating at Double-A. He's seen major leaguers in spring, right? He had a couple of outings in spring. Some really top end strikeout rates for Chase Burns. So I think he's interesting. And I just don't know that they will do it short term like this. And they already didn't, so I don't know what we're waiting for. Maybe it's more of a long-term injury. The thing that is interesting about this for me is that Hunter Greene is sitting 99, and he already was one of the hardest throwing pitchers in baseball. And I just don't know I don't know, man. It just doesn't. It seems like a kind of inevitable occurrence, that's like you're really you're closering it for 5 innings, 6 innings at a time. I think and it'll never work. You can never tell a pitcher to throw softer, but I just wonder if he couldn't just sit 97, 98 like he did last year and be great and be healthier longer. I don't know.
Injuries were still a problem for him, even with a little less velo, though. So
that's true.
At least it's not his shoulder. At least it's not his elbow. I guess that's the silver lining here. But Burns just looks like he's overmatching AA hitters. I mean, geez, a 40.1% K rate on the season, 38.6% at AA. Not walking anybody. Just like what's he going to learn at AA? Maybe bump him up one more level, make sure he ticks the boxes at AAA, and perhaps we see him a month from now. The Reds are just one of those teams, you guys. They're just weird. They're 3 below 500. They're in a division where they could keep hanging around. So I don't really know what they would be waiting for with Burns.
Yeah,
maybe getting on the right schedule.
They have a decent run differential, plus 23. That's, very close to the Brewers, better than the Padres and Astros, and and the Red Sox and Braves. So they look like a decent team that maybe should have a better record. But then you look at their projection, and they're projected for a minus 21 run differential, mostly because they're going to give up a ton more runs, almost the same offensive projection. So this is like, you're like, oh, that's interesting. So when somebody regresses in that system, maybe they could, in that rotation, maybe they say, instead of that, like dealing with Nick Martinez at a 5 ERA or whatever it is, I don't know who it is that's necessarily going to redress the worst. They just be like, oh no, we're going to use Burns. I guess I have a candidate for regression, but we'll get to that later.
We can get to that right now.
Call the tease.
Let's get right after it. Who is your candidate for regression in this Cincinnati group?
Well, it's always Andrew Abbott. It's always Andrew Abbott, because I can't figure him out. Is he not actually on my list?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why. I don't know if you cut it off at a certain rank and he was ranked below everybody else, and that was why he didn't show up. But the difference between his actual ERA and his projected ERA by most projection systems is going to be in the neighborhood of 2 full runs. And the only thing that's different to me about Andrew Abbott this year versus last year, we talked about him around the same time, trying to figure out what makes it all work for him in that ballpark. He's brought his strikeout rate back up. Same as it was in 2023, in the upper 20s. He's at 27.6% so far. It's working. Like, it's somehow working. I don't know how. It continues to baffle me. But I think when we did our deep dive last year, the pitcher that came up most similar was Nestor Cortez. And there's a few interesting things about Andrew Abbott. Andrew Abbott has a lower career ERA by about a quarter run at Great American Ballpark than he does everywhere else. That's a little weird given his fly ball tendencies and what Great American Ballpark does boosting homers. But that's been the case through parts of 3 seasons now. So I think you can start to comp your way to he's just better than we will always think based on projections, even if we can't fully explain the why. And with Abbott, I mean, look, the K rates in the minors were excellent. So there's something about him that hitters just do not see particularly well. I don't know why the K rate fell as far as it did last year. The concern I would have is that we've seen fades from him every year, and I would assume that's a weather-related thing. Fly ball pitcher, as the weather gets warmer, the ball's going to carry a lot better. That's when he's going to start to get dinged up. This isn't just an Andrew Abbott thing. There'd be a lot of other pitchers that fit into this bucket, but that would be more of my concern than the core skills completely eroding at this point.
Yeah. The ballpark that he's in does contribute to a 4.80 second half ERA for his career with a 2.80 first half situation. And we were looking at those StatCast park factors that talk about extra distance added. And if you look at Cincinnati right now, they're 17th in extra distance added. In fact, minus almost a foot in extra distance added right now because of temperature. It's been cool in Cincinnati. The environment, the elevation, those things are going to be normal. And at some point, the temperature is going to be hot. And I think it will be more in the distance added area. And so I think this ballpark's going to warm up. His fly ball tendencies are going to hurt him more. But I do wonder, you bring up Nestor Cortez, and there's a little bit of this, like, does he just understand his park? But, he also did this in the minors and, a bunch of different parks. But I asked Wilmer Flores once, like, what do you think about Andrew Abbott and what makes him good? And he just said, like, good command of all of his pitches. And I don't know, Location Plus says, around league average command of all of his pitches. And if you look at his movements, you're like, oh, he has exactly dead zone fastball pretty much at 92 miles an hour, which is not even that impressive for a lefty. His changeup's a little bit better this year, but his sweeper has 10 inches of sweep. Like, there are people who have 20 inches of sweep,
Yeah, that's not good. Honestly, he doesn't have any. So he's got a pretty high arm slot, right? 49 degrees.
Yeah.
But he has no vertical on anything. So, like, nothing breaks downwards, nothing breaks, nothing fade, like nothing. It's awful. There's a lot of really bright blue, honestly, top of the league worst vertical, but everything moves horizontally. He's got some positive, four seam moves more than most horizontals, which you don't really want. But he's got the 15 inches of fade on the changeup, and then the curveball's got like 9 inches of glove side. So, like, I think they're just moving differently than it looks like it's going to move. It's just weird.
I mean, I guess it's a little undead zone in that he has a high arm slot and has extra horizontal movement. So kind of Clay Holmesy, where you're like, oh, it's a high arm slot. I expected more to be, like Pavetta, for example, is another guy on this list, and he's actually another pick of mine to regress a lot. And it hurts me to say this because I just came out with rankings and I put him like 30th, and it is the ranking that I regret maybe the most. And I'm getting the most crap for Kris Bubic, but Pavetta, I think we saw the problem in what last night is he's home run. He gives up home runs. He hasn't so far, but San Diego is going to warm up. It's still a cool park, but it's going to warm up. He's going to go into other parks that are warm. We got a homer last night out of Matt Chapman against him. And he throws from a similar high arm slot as Andrew Abbott and gets the vert. But it's like a little bit like, oh yeah, I see your slot. I expect the vert.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit playing with expectations of Abbott.
You mentioned Clay Holmes, and Clay Holmes has that, but then everyone's like, but this thing sinks like crazy. It's so different that you can like anticipate it. Abbott might be just like a little bit there. So guys are just like a little bit off. They're like, what? Which would lead to like
pop-ups and fly balls. Like
exactly.
Fly balls might just be like, oh, that's just not on my barrel.
It like still looks like vert to them, and it isn't there. It's horizontal, and and they're just like, I can't put my finger on this the same way we can't. Maybe that he's just weird enough, which is a weird. Maybe there's a Goldilocks zone for weirdness.
Well, and I know we don't often look at hard hit rates allowed and barrel rates allowed and kind of reverse engineer those numbers. They don't seem to be as helpful on the pitching side as they are on the hitting side. But even going back to last year, 33% hard hit rate allowed by Andrew Abbott, down to 29.6% this year. Like that.
Exactly the type of numbers I never look at.
Right.
They just don't usually mean anything.
Yeah.
And I think just based on how I like the Lodum, the spice of Lodum on a roster, something different, I think I should like Andrew Abbott. I think I should believe in him. If he's just weird enough, he's going to keep beating his expected ERA numbers by a run. Like that's just what he's done up to this point. It's 300 innings now. This is what he does.
Yeah.
So
300 innings is a lot.
It's a pretty good sample at this point. And most people are going to look at it through the lens of there's no way he's this good. I'll trade him. So he's gettable in just about any league. And maybe you're just a little bit careful about some of the more extreme matchups he gets over the course of the season. But I think he's just better than we've given him credit for this entire time. And I'm willing to just take the L and say it's working, even if I can't completely explain it.
Yeah, I don't know why he should be at the top of this list, but if you want to throw up the list, this is the biggest difference between OOPSY projected ERA and actual ERA. I guess there might be some missing people because right there at the top, near 2 runs, there should be an Andrew Abbott. But Kris Bubic leads the list right now. He was maybe the most the ranking that caused the most consternation in the comments of my, I have the rank there too. I'll throw this in Discord later because it's a valuable chart. I think some of these guys I didn't care because I think the projections are still good. So Hunter Brown and Max Fried, still really good projections. You wouldn't really expect them to have an ERA that starts with 1 unless it's just that golden Cy Young season, which it could be for Fried or Brown, but that's not how projections work. They're gonna regress them. I didn't care about Crochet for a similar reason, but some guys where it did affect the rankings was Imanaga. He's got a 4 ERA projection for most systems. And I think he's got kind of a smallish arsenal. It's not the greatest fastball. It's relying a lot on that forkball. That's why Kodai Senga is also on here. And maybe like a really good forkball splitter is a ghost in the system that messes up the projections. But you can also see, regression coming on Kodai Senga's cutter and 4-seam. And Kodai Senga's K-minus BB is not very good. And Imanaga has given up home runs in the past. So, that's why he's on the list. Seth Lugo's on the list. And I had someone draw a comparison between Seth Lugo and Kris Bubic. I don't know. Kansas City is about to heat up too. Right now, they have always had surprising park factors. It's not as pitcher friendly as people expect it to be. Right now, on the park factors in terms of added distance, it's adding 4 feet, and it's only going to get hotter. So I don't know about the disconnect there. But a lot of interesting names on this list. I'll share it. But Bubic is the guy I wanted to talk about real quick because I had an interesting interchange with Alex Chamberlain, who was talking about. He said that the fastball is pretty decent and has been suppressing exit velocities so far. That should show up in stuff. So stuff says it's a good fastball. And I don't really believe in suppressing exit velocities as a thing that happens for a long time and it's very repeatable because it's like a command-based thing. So I think at some point he's going to drop in there. But he did say he has like an implied miss distance he's created where it's like, I don't know how he's necessarily doing it, but he's trying to find like a miss distance. And he said that Bubic's fastball was second best among all fastballs thrown at least 200 times. So if Bubic is doing something that I'm missing, it's fastball command with a decent fastball shape and a really good changeup. What I yell at when I watch his things is he throws this big old sweeper that, is slow, and you're not really supposed to throw, sweepers to opposite hands. And his is like a pretty blah sweeper that's, not fast. And I watch hitters just watch it all the way to the middle of the plate. And I feel like that's an adjustment they're going to make. Right now, Kris Bubic has on his sweeper a 206 slugging. And that's weird for throwing a bunch of them to righties, lefty on righty, and for the pitch to be, how fast is it? It's 83 miles an hour. Like, I think that's what's going to change. And somebody who said, well, people who held Lugo all year last year were happy about it. And I was like, Lugo had a 4.8 ERA in July and August last year. And I think that sometimes we just remember things differently because they start out well. And then at the end of the year, you're like, yeah, I had a 3 ERA for the year. And you're like, yeah, but there were some tough times in there. So I feel like Bubic is going to end the season with like a 3.6 or 3.5. And people are going to be like, see, you were wrong. And I'm going to be like, yeah, but in July and August, he had like a 4.6. And there was some regression. So maybe I'll just take the L on Bubic like you were willing to on Abbott. I'm not taking it on Abbott. I'm gonna stick my feet. I'm gonna be a stick in the mud. With Bubic, I'm trying to listen to the people who are criticizing me and trying to learn. And then Matt Eddy would say he's a lefty. You idiot! Both of these guys are lefties, and lefties get good lefty hitters out of the lineup. And you don't see lefties as often. So maybe, but we tried to put a lefty boost in the model. So I don't know. Who did you see on the list? Yeah.
Trevor. Yeah. Who caught your eye on that list, Trevor?
To be honest, Bubic was the guy I looked into the most. So he got me there. You say Kikuchi is interesting to me because he's, for all intents and purposes, kind of a 2-pitch pitcher. And I mean, guys, especially when your division depends on like when you see your division a bunch, I think too, if they've gone through that. I feel like they've been all over the country early here in the year, and maybe then they go and play the AL West a ton at the end. That sometimes is an issue. You have a couple clunkers there, especially when you're a two-way guy. It's entirely possible. It's like, it's what if something's not working, what are your options after that? And on this list, Kikuchi might be the one with, oh, slider's not working, so I have fastball. Like, what, am I going to throw my changeup a bunch now again? Because he never has been able to throw it over the plate anyway. So that is one kind of red flag that I would usually look at. And then, you know, anyone who deals with, and then Eovaldi is also interesting because you're right, he does fade towards the end pretty much every single year. I'm always fascinated by guys who start strong and finish a little bit, kind of fade at the end, because the way I was taught growing up is with my dad. My dad's like, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And so I was always like obsessed with finishing strong. And some guys just like, that's not the way that they operate. So Eovaldi's interesting to me. He's got a long history of injury as well. This might be a fatigue thing. I don't know.
I got a graph for you. Check this out. So this is Eovaldi's fastball velocity over time. And yeah, obviously there's just the general aging curve of getting older. But if you look within the little bands, 2019, fairly big velocity loss over the course of the season. 2021, big velocity loss over the course of the season. 2022, really big, like from 97 to 94 over the course of 2021. So if you look at within these little bands, you see huge velocity losses over the course of the season, like 3-4 ticks in some seasons. And he's continued that to his day. So he's just, I don't know. It's, it kind of speaks to maybe that, I don't want to say like relieverish mentality that's creeped into starting, but just the idea of like throw as hard as you can until they take the ball from you. Right. So, you know, I think maybe one of the ramifications for that can be that you lose velocity over the course of the season. What Jordan Hicks last year, we put him in the rotation. He's throwing as hard as he was as a reliever. And then just every start a little bit less because your rest and recovery is not the same. Like you can't do that. I guess that's why I'm talking about the Hunter Greene that way. It's like, can you do this? Like, can you really throw as hard as a reliever for 5 innings, 6 innings at a time?
There's also a mental element, right? Like, I was actually thinking about that. A video came across one of my feeds, and it was the kid from Tennessee, the lefty, just throwing fastballs 99 right down the middle and just dominating college guys. But the way he was celebrating, right, just using all this energy, and I'm like, everyone's like, why did they not do this in the big leagues? And I was thinking about it's because there's too many games. Like you watch, just got everyone at home, watch your team, watch the outfielders running on and off the field through the game. They're barely moving. It's because they do it 10,000 times. So like
intentional conservation of energy.
Yeah. Look at basketball. These guys are like, they don't play defense because it's a waste of energy at this point. Like that's why they do. So like you apply that to starting pitching versus relievers. Like relievers. Oh,
I think of it very much in basketball because what you'll find is there are stars that are not two-way stars. And I saw it a lot with Jimmy Butler, where it's like if Jimmy Butler was spending a lot of energy on defense, defending their best star, he was not scoring a bunch. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like a great player, but they hide him on defense. That's why Alex Caruso is like often on the court with Shai, is because Alex Caruso does the defensive work, and they kind of smush the two together, where it's like Shai gets the ball on offense and Caruso gets the ball on defense. Yeah, basically. And so there's a conservation.
It's a trade-off.
I hadn't thought about that. So if you're really like when you do that, like that's like energy.
That's energy, and of course that's after you're done throwing. But like the reason you don't approach it with that like emotional level of
on every
like
AB,
every AB or every time you're pitching is because you run out of gas. There's nothing you can do. You can't run. It's adrenaline. You're utilizing a finite resource in adrenaline. So I think even from starting pitching, especially Nate Eovaldi, everything I've heard about Eovaldi, and most of these are anecdotes from Ottavino, to be honest. But he's just like, he's become such a kitchen sink pitcher. Like he's just like, I'll just one day I'll be like, I like this pitch today. I'm going to throw this a ton. That he's realized that. I think there is a physical component too. He's a really athletic guy. He's really mobile. Those guys tend to not be able to maintain it as well. So you get kind of out of your mechanics over time as you get fatigued, and then things drop off a little bit more stark. But also, he's just like, what's the point? What's the point of trying to throw this 97? If I'm already a little bit tired, I could probably do it, but will it be better than me just throwing 94 and a half and then throwing a bunch of off-speed pitches? No. And as you get older, you make that decision too.
Like, do I need to save some bullets for the postseason? Yeah. Everyone gets an extra tick or two in the postseason, right? So it's like, are we going to be in the postseason? And I wonder, there's got to be some sort of mental component for like, oh, we're the Texas Rangers and we're awful right now, and it's August, and why should I throw 96?
Yeah, I hurt myself. I have before. Another guy who does this pretty starkly. That's really interesting to watch because you can tell by his body language a lot. Framber Valdez. Like there's days he'll be like 92, not care at all. 92, 89 mile an hour change up, and then that big curveball. And then there's like he's in the playoffs. Like now he's 97, 98. You're like, and he's still doing the recoil and thing, and he just like doesn't seem bothered by it.
Yeah.
And it's just not something he just doesn't care about that number up on the board. And then there's guys like me and Tyler Glasnow and Ben Joyce who are all just like flipping up to the velo gun every time. And it's part of like our identity. It's part of how we value ourselves as a pitcher. Like all of that's part of it too, like the type of guy they are. So you're going to see some of that in there, and maybe the guys who care about the velocity as starters fade. There might be a correlation between they fade a little bit more because they're just using all their or they're maximizing their output 100%. Then you have to reset your body, and that could catch up with you if you're not doing perfect every single time and getting that extra rest when you need to. If it's not handled right, then that fatigue will just compound, because I don't think 4 days is enough to get you fully back to 100%. It's not over a season.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing the best version of Casey Mize that we've seen in the big leagues right now. I think, you mentioned him yesterday. We were pulling some names together for the rundown as someone you might be a little bit worried about, but he's got 12% swinging strike rate under the 21.6% K rate. You could argue maybe there's a little room for the K rate to go up. Getting hit in the zone less than ever by a wide margin. Usually Casey Mize lives in the 86 to 87% range, down to 81.8. So I think that's a good sign. Home run rate's up a little bit, and it's been cool in the upper Midwest. So, maybe you got a home run problem you have to worry about. But if you're going to take a few extra Ks and give up the occasional homer, I think you can live with that with Mize's control, right? He's not walking enough guys for that to really come back and absolutely crush him. OOPSY has a 4.04 ERA on Mize the rest of the way. So it's a full run, a little more than a full run above what he's done so far, but certainly not a crash all the way back to the bad, struggling versions of Casey Mize we've seen over the course of his time in the big leagues.
Yeah, the one thing I struggle with, though, for fantasy rankings is that Ks are still a category. And he's not going to be necessarily an asset in that category. So if he's like a 4 ERA guy with below average Ks, then he becomes kind of a guy that you want to be careful with. You use more at home against certain offenses. Just not maybe like a top 40 or top 50 guy. It's just hard to be that without the strikeouts. On the other hand, he's a good pitcher, and this is the best version of himself. I love, and it ended up being, after all the belly aching about, what his breaking ball would be, I think the real step forward for him has just been throwing the heck out of that splitter, throwing it harder and throwing it a lot more. It's not that any of his breaking pitches are that good. They're none of them are above average by Stuff Plus, and they're just, he's got 2 or 3 of them that he throws, and he just mixes them in, but he's become basically a fastball splitter guy. And it's worked. One thing that's also interesting is that he's not a perfect comp for like a Gausman, because he doesn't have the feel on the splitter that Gausman does. And he throws an 89 mile an hour splitter. So I don't know that there is a comp for Casey Mize. I think, Gausman is a guy who comes to mind, but there's obvious differences here. This is a hard splitter, hard fastball, hard splitter, bad breaking balls. The closest I can get is Gausman, really.
his splitter command actually, I mean, at least in terms of, I'd say his control is wildly impressive. I'm looking at the cluster here. He hits the bottom rail of the zone but it's just in the middle every time. And he gets a bunch of fade and gets no vert on it, which is kind of important because he's throwing four seams at the top of the zone. So like the movements are a little bit, ride, fade thing. So he's just not he's getting hit. The splitter's getting hit kind of hard and he's maybe leaving it down the middle a little bit too much. But like in terms of, he throws he never misfires with it. He never throws a crazy one. They're always kind of generally in the same area, which could hurt him a little bit. But you're right about the slider. The slider is just, to be honest, the run value, he only has two positive run values. That's four-seam fastball and slider. His split finger is -3. So he's getting hurt by it. But maybe he should throw it a little bit more. I mean, their batting average, he's only given up singles on the slider. He hasn't given up any extra base hits.
But the only real whiff is the split finger, yeah.
But there's no whiff.
Throw it for whiffs, and you sometimes get hits for homers or whatever, for extra base hits.
So maybe that slider wrinkle pitch to get ahead of guys mid counts, he could use it a little bit more because even if he gives up a hit, it's nothing. To get him to make the splitter a little bit better and a little bit less predictable because he's 60% splitter fastball.
That's a good idea.
Maybe that's a slight adjustment he could make.
Yeah.
But like I see why there might be some concern because again, it's one of those things like say you get some nagging thing, the splitter rises an inch on average, and now it's getting absolutely pummeled, and now it has one pitch. It could go from really, really good to really bad, really fast because it's effectively a two-pitch pitcher.
Trevor, you mentioned the concern about Kikuchi. It's weird because usually, even if the ratios are bad, you're getting strikeouts in bunches, and you sort of live with that. When you're building your fantasy roster, you say, well, I've got a shot at 175, 200 Ks, depending on the number of innings he puts up. This has been weird, though, down to a 20.3% strikeout rate. The walk rate's back up to its 2022 level, 12.9%. And beneath the strikeout rate drop, it's an 8.7% swinging strike rate. So Kikuchi has some pretty big shifts here where he's getting hit more in the zone. At 3.23 ERA rarely goes with a 1.59 whip. Doesn't take much to look at that and go, that ERA is going to jump considerably if he doesn't find a way to start missing some bats again. But why is he struggling so much to miss bats?
This is wild. There's some big differences with him. One, he's got a 1.59 whip. That's way too many base runners. Eventually, those guys are going to score more, and the ERA is going to balloon. But he in 2020, his was that rookie year? Yeah, it was. 2020, he had a 59-degree arm angle. It's a 34-degree arm angle. He's dropped it this year. It's dropped 8 degrees this year from last year, from 42 to 34. And it was consistent. It was 42 3 years in a row and dropped it again. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe his stuff is lining up. How it's moving is lining up with where his hand position is a little bit more. And guys are fouling off and just not missing it as much. Though he is still not giving up the runs. This is definitely like a regret. If you had to predict anybody on this list to regress to the mean, it's Yusei Kikuchi, especially because he's a two-pitch guy. So add all those things together.
Yeah, I wanted
3.23 is probably not going to happen.
That one thing that's like old school, but like has some value, and it was the first tool I ever used in fantasy baseball is whip. And you just generally don't see guys with high whips with low ERAs. The exceptions are maybe like ground ball pitchers. Sometimes will have like a 1.3 whip, and they keep the ball in the yard, but they give up hits. But Kikuchi's not a ground ball pitcher, and he has a 1.5 whip. So it's that's definitely some old school thing that's in my ear. The other thing that is just I just want to bring up is that his pitching coach said that his grips had changed on like all his pitches, and he kind of used that same sort of passive language, like they just changed. So maybe it's a little bit. Shane Bieber was talking to me about how he went to Driveline and they surprised him by being like, "Your grip has changed on your curveball," and he's like, "What?" Like, my curveball that I've been throwing forever? What? And so maybe it's just over time, Kikuchi's been making small adjustments, hasn't realized it, and the ball has actually kind of moved around in his hand. And so, Enright.
And the Astros can catch that, and the Angels definitely can't. So,
well, they just did, I guess. I mean, Enright said it.
They changed. I don't know what to do about it, but they changed. I don't even know. I don't know. I probably shouldn't throw shade, but the Angels are just frustrating. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that Enright might be one of the better situations of the entire organization. Like and it makes sense, right? Like if you are an organization that has problems with player development stuff, maybe your best pitching coach is your major league pitching coach.
Yeah.
I mean, that can exist in some places. So maybe Kikuchi will turn it around and like keep the ERA low just by finding his old grips. But generally, yeah, with the arm slot changes and stuff, I'm out on it.
I know we talked about the angle dropping being maybe a good thing from a health perspective, but the other reason it could happen is the wear and tear. Sometimes it's just the only spot where your arm feels comfortable, and I wonder if it's more along those lines given how sour the results have been, right? Like this doesn't seem like it was intentional, or if it was, I want to know more about the plan, because the pieces are not working the way they usually do for Yusei Kikuchi, and it's just harder to talk yourself into a bounce back given all these things that have shifted.
Another name that should be on the list, and I just reran it, and I don't know why, but this one has all the names we've been talking about on it. But Tyler Mahle would actually be the top would be Andrew Abbott, and then Tyler Mahle, and then Kris Bubic. He's got a 2.02 right now. When I ran this, he had an even lower ERA. Mahle did. His SIERA, which is actually a decent, is one of the better in the suite of ERA estimators in terms of predictiveness, is a 4.48. We know that his stuff isn't great. At this point, we can believe in his location, which is great. So let's say he has great command. And he throws a 4-pitch mix, fastball, splitter, cutter, slider. Like, how far are we willing to push a guy with a 92 mile an hour fastball, no pitch that's above average by Stuff Plus, and 4-pitch mix and command? Like that's how I would put it. It's like, you really think this is like a 2 or like a low 3s? I think this is just basically. He looks like a kind of a 4 ERA guy. He's going to have ups and downs. And so I just think that some downs are coming, and we saw it in the last one. One thing I will put on my tombstone is that ERA is not predictive.
What else are you going to put on there? Have you thought this through? You said one thing. I mean, that makes me think that you've thought of several things that you'd like written on there.
Oh, I don't know. I met somebody at an event recently that said, I hope that they put on my tombstone that he likes sports. It's like,
you have to put that on. They'll just assume that.
Yeah, I think the people that knew you are going to know that. So the people that didn't know you probably don't need to know anyway. Anybody else, though, that you're worried about based on performance to this point being unsustainable? I think the Bubic mentioned earlier, it makes sense, but also I think he's probably a little bit better than we all realized coming in, showed that pre-injury. And if he's a 3.50 ERA, 3.75 the rest of the way with a good whip and plenty of strikeouts, I think you're still going to be pretty happy with where you drafted him. The Eovaldi explanation made a lot of sense. We got into Mize a little bit already. Oh, the aces. You mentioned them in passing. This is the last part of this conversation. The guys who are really, really good, like Crochet, Fried, Brown, the sub-2 ERA guys. Like, I don't think there's anything actionable to do with them. You're not trading them right now because even though you can get, you're not trading them because you're expecting a crash or because the numbers say they won't be this good.
Here's one I am worried about that I might trade.
Who?
deGrom?
deGrom would be unique in this group because of age and injury history and all those things. So,
but
sure.
Also recently a dive in stuff. And
he struck out nobody the other day. That's unacceptable, Jake.
But also unacceptable for me as the keeper of Stuff Plus. He had a below average Stuff Plus for the last 2 starts. Jacob deGrom of all people. Like when we started Stuff Plus, he was always like, and deGrom is first. You know, that was like how you started the sentence, you know? And he would be up there with the relievers. You didn't have to put the starter filter on. It'd be like deGrom has the second best Stuff Plus in baseball, period. Like right behind Aroldis Chapman or whatever it was, you know? So I have to say I'm worried. And it's fairly obvious that, you know, it's partially velocity related, you know? His sliders down to 88. This is a guy who had been throwing at 92, 93. I know it's still high.
His average fastball is 97 still.
I know, but it's 96.5, and that's the worst of the season. And it's 2 in a row. I'm just worried that it's like, and you know, he grabs a hamstring or something, you know, and then we're like, that this was always the risk. So I don't know. I could see the case to be made to trading deGrom.
How about he turns 37 in 2 weeks and maybe he's just human? Like that. Is that a satisfactory explanation here? And,
no, that's fine one too. But like that, what does that mean going forward? I mean, it's like more humanity.
Well,
and if he strikes out 0 in another game, he's not going to give up 0 runs.
I'd probably eat a hat if he made another 5+ inning start without striking at least one guy out. That probably won't happen again.
I'm surprised it ever happened, honestly.
Even with the decline and stuff in these last 2 starts, the decline to his level is not so bad that you're like, yeah, no strikeouts in 5 1/3. That's normal. Just a weird outlier performance. Like I'm not any more worried about deGrom. Whatever level of worry I had at the beginning of the season, it's the same. Just worried about him breaking because I'm always worried about him breaking.
This has added another level of worry for me where I'm like, there's a third path in the wood. Like there was like, well, we always thought at the beginning of the year, he's like, either he's healthy and he's dominant or he's not healthy. But there's a third path, which is he's healthy and okay.
He's 80% of the guy he used to be, or 65% of the guy he used to be, but he's healthy. That's still a very good pitcher. That's a positive outcome in general, if that's what he ends up doing.
I'd be interested in like what other people thought. You know, I would at least float him and be like, you know, how are other people evaluating him in my league?
I don't think you're going to find a lot of blind optimism. You're going to find the reasonable skepticism that everyone has about him because of the age and the injury history. Is there a theme with any of these guys, though, as far as like certain things they do? Generally, it's a group of guys that are a little lighter in strikeouts overall. Yeah. So that's kind of a major red
even
flag.
OOPSY that uses Stuff Plus and Location Plus and everything will use K-BB. So K-BB is a huge part of projection systems. Most of these guys don't do great in K-BB because they're not striking guys out. But I'll also say that there's a fair amount of these guys who have good command. I'm looking now at the top. And if you're just looking at Location Plus, Tyler Mahle 112, Bubic 105, Festa 102, Eovaldi 106, Logan Henderson came up with a 111, Brian Weathers is a 106. So it's mostly green in the Location Plus department, like a Sugano, who is one of the guys who's supposed to regress the most. Has a 105 Location Plus and a bunch of pitches, and that's your way around the model, the projections, and everything is command and a bunch of pitches.
What if there's another way around all of this? The ball, the drag on the ball. It is it's good if you're a pitcher with home run problems, right? Like maybe you're less likely to crash as a result of all of this. Like, how do you feel about this ball, Trevor?
I love it. I think it was a great ball. Come out of retirement. Get back in shape.
Coming back. It's going to join the Cubs bullpen.
Yeah, when join the Rockies, fix them. Be up there with Jake Bird, be the highest WAR on the team. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm just making it big.
We're looking at a graph that shows the most drag on the ball basically since we've tracked it.
What? Okay, so this side, the drag coefficient. percentage-wise, because obviously this graph is the way it's scaled makes it even look really,
But they had
glaring.
to change the scaling to fit that top ball in this year.
Okay. All right. So I'm just like in my head, I'm trying to figure out like what the difference between, a 0.25, which was the average in 2009, and then what 0.35 that it is this year on average, which is +3. Like, what's +3 drag coefficient mean in?
Right.
I don't know.
It's like it's Greek
feet.
But so I went and looked at barrels and barrels are going 7 feet less far. So I say, okay, maybe it's 7 feet.
Kind of a lot.
Tango has a thing out that says no. There's not that much difference. And then I was like, well, if there's not that much difference, but we know drag is different, then what else is different? But before I thought I'd get too conspiracy theory, I checked with resident physicist of baseball. This is our scientist extraordinaire. He's independent. He is unassailable. I love him. Alan Nathan. Checked with Alan Nathan, and I said, how do I square this? And Alan sent me an email where he did the math, thankfully, so that I don't have to do it. And just so I'm quoting him correctly, he said he looked at launch angles and exit velocities and found the mean distance to be 370 feet, 25 to 30 degrees launch angle, 90 mile per hour exit velocities and higher. However, when I corrected for air density using game time temperature and elevation, I found that the ball traveled about 3.2 feet further in 2024 with a standard error of about a half a foot. So I'm going to say 3 feet. This is worth 3 feet. And 3 feet is not nothing.
Nope. Ask a fielder chasing a ball if 3 feet's.
Yeah.
3 feet's nothing.
Can you rob a homer? If it's 3 feet less, can it leave warning track? 3 feet is going to lead to fewer home runs. And that's what we've seen this year. So it's not a huge effect. But if you're looking at something like home run per 9 innings, we are back down to 2022, 1.09 homers per 9 innings, which is like drag would tell you. Yeah, you would probably go back to 2022, the last time we had drag this high.
And
the only thing that's going to change that rate potentially is just the warmer months still haven't happened yet. So I would imagine you get a little bump as a result of the temps around the league just being higher in the middle 3 months.
Yeah, but usually I think we'll still find in some it should be down a little bit because we're missing 3 feet. And now the question is, why is this happening? I've collected some ideas. There's somebody texting me that used to work in manufacturing with the league, and he was talking about the dies that they make to cut the ball. So if you basically don't replace that and like don't make new ones all the time, which is an expensive process because we're talking about manufacturing and we're talking about like the metal, then it doesn't cut as sharply, or it doesn't cut as correctly every time. The metal will soften or somehow not make the cut as quickly or as nicely as you want. So basically, quality assurance over time goes down. And what you normally should do is get a new die, get that made. Here's a wrinkle that is meaningful that I hadn't even thought about. The tariffs. Now, all of the minor league balls are made in China. And
surprise!
The reason that they do that is it's about, 20 to 30% cheaper to make the ball in China. And so they're making a bunch of minor league balls. They're like, we're going to save some money on this. Well, 20 to 30% is an interesting number because that's around what the tariffs went up. So if all of a sudden the minor league ball is as expensive or more expensive to make than the major league ball, you have to think that baseball would change something. Rawlings would change something because you wouldn't want to just lose a bunch of money making minor league balls. So this is all conjecture, but it's informed conjecture. We have a change in the ball at the major league level. We don't have an explanation for it. and we do know that there are changing economic factors that could change the way you would process, you would make a ball. So
interesting.
I don't know exactly what's happening, but it is pretty stark when you look at that drag graph.
I would love to know how they're making the decisions, because I don't even know what the tariffs are right now. So I've heard 91 different numbers. So if they could just let me know how they're confident in making those decisions, that'd be great. Thanks.
Don't know if you're going to get clarity on that one, Trevor, but
I don't think so. I don't think anyone knows.
So there was an interesting thing we were talking about yesterday with park factors. We were starting to dig into the new things we found, the temperature-related factors and the increased distance caused by a few different environmental conditions. And the basic question we were starting to tackle was, do park factors fully capture park effects? And it got me thinking, like, what if you showed up to the ballpark on a day you were going to pitch, Trevor, and you looked at a tablet, looked at a screen, and it had dynamic real-time park effects to account for the conditions of that day? Would it change your preparation for that day in a significant way? Would you be accounting for that information in your game planning and things you were going to try and do with all that information at your disposal?
I would say that I would approach that the same way that I would approach knowing I was going to pitch in Colorado, right? So I'm not changing an arsenal. Like, most guys can't be like, I'm a ground ball guy today, like avoid the fly ball or something. That's not, I don't think that's a feasible way.
You still have a core identity, I guess.
You still have a core identity. You just try to choose the things that might be, like, you try to stay away from the things that are going to be crushed by those park factors, if there are any. And then you're going to try to just lean maybe more heavily on the thing that's not affected as much. For example, in Colorado, gyro sliders, for whatever reason, are slightly affected, but not quite as much. As sweepers are gone. Like, it's just, there's so much depth that they can't sweep. And four-seam fastballs, like, I lost 4.5 inches on average on mine, which is bad, to the point where it's like turning into a sinker. So that's like one thing you're like, maybe I'll just flip gyros up there all day.
Kind of be like gyro changeup today or whatever.
Yeah, or try to sneak a four-seam fastball just with velo, because try to push and pull more. That's how it would change. Like if for example the wind just was howling in and like we had actual data showing what direction it was in and whatever, maybe you're more inclined for a guy who's got, could get you, or a guy with not a ton of pop, but there's one spot that he lifts that goes out of the park a lot. Maybe you're more inclined to attack him there, or try to, because you're like, you're just not going to get it out today.
He probably doesn't get attacked there that often. He might get a surprise. You might get a surprise called strike in there or something.
Exactly. So then you'd be like, what are a couple like new cards that I now have to play that I didn't have before, that and you're counting on the hitter not making the same adjustment that you made, right? Because you have the ball at the end of the day. It's easier for hit pitchers to make this adjustment than it is for hitters. I think that's it. So you're like, are there any new cards that I can add to my hand today? And what cards do I need to take out? And if there's any, and sometimes you look and you're like, well, it just makes everything I throw bad. So I guess the card I want to play is don't put me in. Put someone else in.
Hammy's a little tender. I would love to pitch
the day before as a reliever. I'd love to pitch the day before you go to course. Just give me at least one game off.
Yeah. I only had
I do a back-to-back the day before we go to course.
I only had one career outing there, which
really,
yep.
Wow,
we just
that's
got
a good one. I remember I was talking
there
once to Brandon McCarthy about something that had nothing to do with Coors, and he's like, "Do you know how much Coors sucks?" That's like, what?
Never been more tired running to the mound.
Oh, wow.
And it's so far too. You're in center field. It's so far, and you're like, man, I feel like I got a weighted vest on running out here.
I did want to ask you, do you remember any specific alterations that you ever made to your approach given your home park? Now, home park is something that you have a whole year of, so it's not necessarily today we're going to do something different. So, I'm thinking the foul ground in Oakland. I'm also thinking that Minnesota, maybe that changes over the course of the year, but Minnesota's cold in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, like you'll throw more fastballs when it's cold.
Yeah.
Just because guys are they want something softer to try to get a barrel.
They don't want to get off the barrel, and
no one's super excited to get the bat going either. So like that's when you can you're jamming guys and stuff right down the middle because everyone's just miserable and it's It could be snowing. It's just not yet. Like that's kind of usually what it is.
Yeah.
And pitchers just have a huge advantage when it's cold out. Like the pitcher versus hitter advantage is huge.
How about the foul ground? Did you ever use can you use foul ground?
I think it comes down to like some places you're okay trying to get them under the ball all the time. Like you're like, I'm just going to throw up, let them lift it.
Oakland, it's cold.
Oakland's
you're probably not going to hit a homer.
Yeah, it's hard to hit a homer already, and I'm a fly ball pitcher.
Yeah,
lean heavily into that. Throw things that are going to get popped up all the time because it might just be a foul out. My first pitch I ever threw in the big leagues was a foul out in the Oakland Coliseum. So,
and for your pitches, you have pop-up rates or launch angles that are available to you. And did you ever see like expected launch angles or expected whiff rates or expected pop-up rates for your pitches?
In passing,
but you also, as a pitcher, know which ones of your pitches get pop-ups.
Yeah. I looked at them like that's all I give up is like my ground ball fly ball rate was just ridiculous. It's like 1.5 or towards fly ball. It was like 0.33, 0.5, yeah. So it was just insane. So like at no point did I don't think there was a moment in my major league career ever in 10 years of thinking, let's go for a ground ball here. I don't think I thought that one time. It was, I need to punch this dude out or I need to punch this dude out. Those are my two options.
Old school pitching coach's dream.
Yeah. I watched Nolan Ryan a lot when I was a kid. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I just wanted to share one thing real quick that might resonate with you before we leave. It's just a great piece from Russell Carlton, aka Pizza Cutter, over at Baseball Prospectus, and he was looking into park factors, and he had this. I love the way he thinks. He was like, can I legislate all this stuff out and find an effect for? And I'd never thought of this before. Guys returning to parks that they used to call home. Mm. So this is you as an Oakland A coming back to New York, or you as a Met coming back to Minnesota, right? And so his theory was like, if those people were in a third class where, like, let's say there's the home pitcher, the away pitcher, and then there's a third class, which is like the away pitcher used to call it home. Mm. Then he would say, he's saying, if that is true, and it is, that basically there's something about that familiarity with a park and a situation that breeds comfort, may breeds confidence, whatever it is. Here's the sort of big paragraph. Sure enough, once we do this, which is basically, account for as much as things as possible, right? We see that home players strike out less than we would otherwise expect of them. Visitors strike out slightly more. The returning players, who are visitors in name but had once called this place their home, struck out more than we would otherwise expect, but not as bad as the other players on their team. So there's this third class of like returning to your home. Did you ever feel that? Like when you were back in Minnesota, you're like, there's always the joke of like, I almost went to the wrong clubhouse. You're like, but did you go to the old coffee place you always went to? Or did you have an old apartment that you could just sleep in, or like you did rent out that week and you were like, I slept in basically my old bed? Or what was it like when you came back to Minnesota as a Met or came back?
I never went back as a Met. It was the last road trip as an A.
Oh, wow.
I got to go back for the first.
Did you feel a sense of comfort back in Minnesota?
I did, because the hotel's like just across the bridge on the Mississippi River from the apartment I had for 2 years in COVID too. So I could see the building, all of the North Loop, like restaurants and stuff. I went to the same coffee shop. You mentioned that I've gone to.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
I got recognized a couple times by people like, you played here. It was weird being on the visitor side a little bit, but not so much, because during COVID for summer camp, they split the pitchers and the hitters up, and the pitchers were over in the visitor clubhouse, because of course we were. Yeah. So I was like, this feels, I've been back here. And then for Twins Fest and stuff, that would be like the staging area for all the players too. So I spent a lot of time in there and eating in there. So it wasn't that wasn't super weird. It was weird though when I texted the PR team. I was like, "Hey, I'm really excited about this welcome home video you guys made for me." And he's like, "Oh yeah, we totally got." I'm like, You guys didn't do anything." And then we got there,
He's like, guys, get on it quick.
And they did it, and it was clearly just whipped up, which is so funny. I'm like, I knew you didn't do it, but I did want one, so I'm glad I did it. And everyone's like, "Who's that guy?" Like, but I'm like, "Hey,
what's this?
I'm 11th all time in holds in this team, guys."
Did they have some B-roll of you eating sandwiches in the clubhouse and like not even doing stuff on the field?
It was like giving up a fly ball to get a save or something. Like I'm like, I struck out so many guys. And then my Zubaz commercial I did for them, which is legendary. I gotta go find it. Yeah. But then they played that, like it kept popping up like those, and all my teammates were like, "What the hell's that?" I'm like, all right. And there was some Fortnite dancing in there somewhere. Like it was. Yes, but I know the guys who put it together too, so it was all good fun. They're like, "Did you like it?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I loved it. Send it to me. Thanks for making it last night. Appreciate that."
I just love that you shamed them into making you a welcome home video. That is.
They still deny it to this day. Dustin Morse. He's like, no, we thought about it. I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Dustin's great. I like Dustin. He's a great, good dude. We're gonna go on our way out the door. Reminder: you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Thanks to our producer Brian Smith for putting this episode together. You can find Eno on Blue Sky, enoceras.bscout@social. Trevor is I am Trevor May. I am BVR. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.